September 1st meeting of the Rules and Strategic Planning Standing Committee. I'm going to call this meeting to order. There was proper proof of notification. Ms. Dole placed it on the bulletin board. Agenda item number 3 is agenda approval. We've got a 12-point agenda today. Motion by Cosgrove, second by Frank. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. We have an agenda. We also do have a quorum, so we've got 6 members, 4, 5, 6 of us in the room here today. So we have 6 out of 9. So public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment to the committee? Okay, so we'll go to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the August 4th Strategic Planning Committee meeting. Motion by Frank, second by Glassbrunner. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say no. All right, that motion carries. We have approved minutes. Agenda item number 6, capital improvement program. I'll hand it off to Mr. Langreck. Do you mind kicking us off there?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Looking today for a motion to accept the 2023 capital improvement program plan and to make recommendations to the Finance and Personnel Committee on pursuing short-term financing to fund identified 2023 projects. Background on this item is taken from your strategic plan. Within the strategic plan, it calls for the Strategic Planning Committee in collaboration with the County Administrator will develop a comprehensive capital facilities plan in 2022 that will include an inventory of existing capital facilities owned by the county, a forecast of future needs for such capital facilities, and proposed locations and capacities of expanding or new capital facilities, at least a 6-year plan that will finance such capital facilities within projected funding capacities and clearly identified sources of public money for such purposes, and then a requirement to reassess the land use element if probable funding falls short of meeting existing needs, and to ensure that the land use element, capital facilities plan element, and financing plan with the capital facilities plan element are coordinated and consistent. Park and recreation facilities shall be included in the capital facilities plan element. It is the intent of the committee that the following information be considered by County Board Supervisors as we begin to develop the capital facilities plan and work through the 2023 budget. So we're falling short in 2022 of trying to meet all those types of things, but certainly trying to build on our existing materials and trying to build that full comprehensive look at all of our buildings and what the needs are for them. Attached plan is on here. As we discussed last meeting, there was a few questions that were solicited out and came back, and a couple of changes that were made to the document, mostly with correction and cleanup. Document is presented here in item number 06A of your packet. And as stated on the first one, looking for acceptance of the capital improvement program plan, and then to forward or make recommendation to finance and personnel to fund the identified items with short-term capital borrowing. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so thank you for on page 3. The highway projects are listed out here. So thanks to you and Mr. Elder for getting on here. It's nice to see projects that are programmed for next year, and then the garage doors, which I had the pleasure of seeing the ingenuity of some of the highway staff and how they patched together the garage doors with recycled highway signs. So it looks like we do need those. Parks question that came up at the last meeting was about the toilets at Pier County Park. Should those be, they're currently planned for 2024. The toilets at Viola County Park and the rifle range are planned for next year. And I think the question was, well, should we have the Pier County Park? One Supervisor Gentis had this question, moved up to 23 since it gets more use. So I did have a little communication with Kathy Cooper, our county conservationist and our Parks Department director, lead person. And the only thing I heard, and I did forward it to Supervisor Severson, Supervisor Rudersdorf as well. I didn't hear any feedback from either one of the supervisors, but I heard from Ms. Cooper that she said something about the toilet being in the floodplain at Pier County Park. I think she was implying that was going to add a level of challenge, but I didn't get a chance. My follow-up question to her was going to be, I didn't get a chance to ask her this, but would another year give you the ability to deal with that challenge better, or is it just pushing it off? She agreed that Pier County Park gets more use than Viola and the rifle range. So based on mostly a lack of opinion by our colleagues on the board, and that little bit of information from Ms. Cooper, I think my opinion is I think we could move it ahead in the plan and swap it out with one of those if we choose to do that out of this committee and forward it to finance. Things change, even after you start implementing the plan the next year. So, if we want to say we think it's a priority because more people use it, I think that's up to us. So I'm not hearing a lot of resistance. I'm just hearing a little bit like a challenge that's going to have to be dealt with.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr.
What,
Brewer.
do you have any idea what maybe do they have to mound it up and get it above the flood level? Is that the idea? Or
That could very well be
like
it. But
if you think about the administration building at the fairgrounds and the restrooms there, it's up elevated. So maybe that's what has to be done.
Could be.
In which case it would be probably more extensive than just a restroom update, although it needs it.
And I wonder maybe if the $20,000 might not be quite enough, given that. So maybe I wonder if it's just moving that up and giving it more money in case they need more to deal with that challenge. But unfortunately, Ms. Cooper, she's up in Casanova in the field right now, and she wasn't reachable by cell phone for the meetings. So
I feel a little, I don't feel good doing it unless you've heard from the supervisors. I mean, they must have a strong reason too. I mean, I'd like to see it change, but I thank you for, I don't know, I just like to have I don't think we should go over them. That's what it is.
I'm not sure they talked about this. I think this just came from staff. My impression is it didn't go through the committee because I know Ms. Rudersdorf has been at a lot of the meetings, and this was kind of all new to her. So we might be the first committee that's really dealing with this from a county board.
Well, do we have to decide it today? We
do need to,
okay.
because this is
But
on
we
the
can-
agenda for finance for next week.
Yeah, but you can change it. I mean, because you need to know how much more that's going to cost, because I understand it is all sort of level there, and I would guess it's all floodplain.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we move this along to finance, and then in the next few days, we'll find out more,
Okay.
and we can address it at finance.
Yeah, Mr. Langrick. go
Sure,
ahead.
I was just going to say, so in context of our borrowing and the recommendation to
Yeah.
finance and personnel, you'd still be asking for roughly $20,000 for appropriations towards parks projects versus next year at $12,500. So if there was reprioritization, even post borrowing, in the resolution that we're going to put together is going to be broad enough to allow for movements like that. You can come back and do a change plan post borrowing as well. But if you want to solidify it on the front end, so it's not called the question of, this is how we had it in the capital plan, that's fine as well.
And I wondered, Supervisor Gentis, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to Mr. Severson to
Yeah,
see if
I
you
will.
can
I will.
see if I'm correct that
Okay.
if he doesn't have an opinion
Yeah.
on it, and then in the meantime, I could try to get a hold of Ms. Cooper again and see if I can get a more solid commitment out of her. And if it is gonna take 2 years to do it, because she's gotta go through the permitting process for septics or something like that. If, assuming it's a septic system, then maybe we just leave it. But
So did Marty make a motion that?
he did, oh yeah,
We
sorry.
need to,
Mr. Chairman, would you count me present?
Oh, of course, you're present.
Or was my motion based, for the entire, capital planning? I'll make that motion, for the entire capital planning.
Proposed language today, and certainly can deviate from it, is to accept the 2023 capital improvement program plan and to make recommendation to Finance and Personnel Committee on pursuing short-term financing to fund identified 2023 projects.
and Marty, would you say that you would consider, changing the priority of the restrooms at the parks? Add that to it? Okay. I'll second it if that's on there.
Okay, so we've got a motion to accept it as is with some additional consideration for moving some of the parks projects around between now and the Finance Committee.
So a question with that.
Yeah, Mr. Frank.
So under notes for that project, it says recommend moving to 2025. Not doing that, taking that recommendation? Are we going to remove that comment out of there? I'm seeing under 2023 projects under parks, $20,000 for the toilet facilities, and Viola, $20,000 for, it's on page 19.
But is that only for the Pine Valley Trail? Yeah.
Oh,
Correct. Not to make a confusion, but yes, but line C in there, that's referencing to move it to 2025. It was just, as we move forward, I'm going to have to think of a cleaner method on how to identify, but to still show that changes were made, because we're kind of using it as not only the finalized plan, but then also to show recommendations and changes as we moved along.
I see that. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
And I haven't heard anyone object to moving Pine Valley Trail to 2025, so it might, for the final plan, it might just be, just cut it out, because, yeah, and you've been transparent with that I think Ms. Cooper submitted Pine Valley Trail and you recommended moving it to 2025, is that right? And then we're going along with that recommendation, basically, so. Okay, any other thoughts or comments on capital improvement program?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. C.
I wasn't aware of the Parks Commission's input with regard to the Pine Valley Trail. Was that their recommendation?
We're not getting a lot of communication from the Parks Commission at this point. So we kind of have to go off of what little we know. We are going to have a little communication with them about the toilets. Linda's going to reach out to Carrie. I'm going to reach out to Kathy Cooper, our staff.
Oh, at the toilet at Pier Park.
Yeah, and I did forward this to Mr. Severson, Ms. Rudersdorf, and Ms. Cooper about a week ago, or a little less than a week ago, because Mr. Langreich sent me this updated document. So, and I didn't hear anything from them. So at some point, we just have to, of course, keep moving.
That
we're gonna
toilet,
do our best.
that toilet certainly doesn't do much for the county.
For the what of the county?
That bathroom set up in Rockbridge is not very conducive to a positive image for the county parks.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think by next week when we have our Finance and Personnel Committee meeting, hopefully we'll be able to bump that project up, but we just want to make sure we're not stepping on anyone's toes.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you. All right, so all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. The capital improvement program will be moving on to the Finance Committee. Okay, agenda item number 7, ethics review. So I want to, uh-oh, are you all overwhelmed? I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, well, no, that's okay. I remember So we talked about ethics at three meetings, I think, the last term, and then one meeting this term. And I remember it was at our first or second ethics meeting, Mr. Seep said, I think we're lost in the woods here. And, I kind of took that, and not, criticism is not, I know it was helpful, because I thought, yeah, we really don't know what we want, and I kind of took it like I need to do some more homework before I bring it back to the committee. So I was kicking this can down the road of doing this for quite a while. But the ethics ordinances from those other counties, I think it's 18 pages, or each like 6 pages long. It was like drinking from a fire hose. There was so much stuff in there. And so yesterday, I knew the next step after hearing your all's initial comments last month was we got to just see some choices laid out. We don't need to go through all of this. I know it's a lot. But I thought we could at least get started on making some choices. If we get through it, great. If we don't, we of course have more time. But when I really started to lay it out in a chart by topic, then I was able to organize what is it that ethics means in these ordinances. I was having a hard time really. I knew it was gifts, I knew it was something about the public trust, and not breaking laws and things like that. But I had a really hard time understanding it. So are you comfortable with going through some of these rows to start to see if we can make some decisions about whether we want some of these things in our ethics ordinance? You want more personal time with it, or are you comfortable going through it today?
Talk us through.
Yeah.
Maybe high level first,
Yeah.
instead of jumping in the weeds. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. 10,000 feet here. So the first few rows, governing body. So if you just follow the left column under topic, purpose of ethics, positions covered. Those three categories are kind of like the intro to the ethics ordinance. Then starting under closed session policy, I alphabetized. And I should have put like a row in there to divide the line to make this more obvious.
What do you mean you alphabetize?
So closed session policy is CL, then contracting policy is next as CO. Then if you keep scrolling down to page 3, it gets into financial interest policy. This is on the left side.
Alphabetize, am I just? Oh,
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Brent. It's okay. No. Sometimes if you just say the same thing over again, it doesn't get it through. So I need someone else. So then there's gift policy, and in some cases I put the definition with right next to it in the row below. So I think under gift policy it says gift definition, because what does a gift mean? So each county kind of defined it a little differently. Then nepotism policy. Privileged information policy. I mean, what is privileged information? I didn't know. I had to really kind of pull the language to get that. There's a definition for that one. Underneath that, I did not do a great job organizing this, so okay. Well, but still, it could use some better organization. Immediate family definition, that went with the privileged information one, because that was the only place in all these ordinances I could find immediate family. So I put the definition right next to it. And then public property policy, and then social media policy. That was one of the big themes that came out of the last meeting. So then I put a row in between social media policy and advisory opinions. And this section is more about like the process of the board or the committee that deals with ethics. So they had issue advisory opinions. There's a procedure, a complaint procedure detailed in the next row, an investigation procedure, and then enforcement. And that's the last row. So it's kind of like an intro, then it gets into the meat of what does ethics mean, and then it finishes with like process. That's how I would 10,000 feet level, try to explain it. Any other thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Seep, and then Ms. Glassburner.
um, Ms. Glassbrenner is very welcome to go first if she would like.
Go ahead,
but-
Mr. Seep.
With regard to privileged information, I think that's quite clearly laid out in the federal privacy laws, which the state of Wisconsin has aligned itself with. And if you Google uh, privacy, the Privacy Act of the state of Wisconsin, it lays out very clearly the whole concept of privileged information. And that is something that I'd be glad to pull that up and bring it to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That's a very, very important matter.
Okay, Ms. Glassburner.
Mr. Chair, I don't know exactly, is there particular topics on here that you think that we could make a decision on? I mean, I guess the one comment I would make, and I'll be honest, I didn't read through the entire other county ethics ordinances word for word. I did, however,
you can be forgiven.
look over that, and it appeared to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it appeared that Crawford and Sauk were very similar. Like maybe was it essentially the same document? It looked very similar to me.
You're right. They were very similar. In most cases, they had the same language, but there were some cases where they had differences.
Okay. And then my other comment would be, I did like the way that those two had it laid out. I felt like it was easy to read and clear definitions, as opposed to some of the other, I mean, even just the way, this is just getting into the weeds, but some of the other ones, it was more difficult to try to understand.
Okay, so you like the layout
I did.
with the definitions up front. I think they had definitions
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah, and they had it organized very nicely.
Okay.
That's just a subjective opinion.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah, Mr. Brewer.
refresh my memory, but why are we doing this?
Good question. What's that? Yeah, start at the beginning here. So I think we're doing this because how did I get on this kick? I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Mr. Chair, I thought it was because we've changed our structure now, so we had to relook at the ethics board.
Well, that was one reason, but that reason didn't come up until we did the reorganization. We were looking at this before.
Have we had,
Because certain people have family members working in the.
Well,
I
that comes
thought
up.
That came up a couple times at our committee meetings.
Yeah, that's come up because, yeah, some people have immediate family working at the county. I don't think there were any big problems. I mean, myself, okay, me personally, I've opened up the ethics ordinance before because I asked for a copy of it at some point because I last term was chairing the rules committee and we were in charge of administering the ethics ordinance. So at some point I asked the clerk for a copy of the ordinance, just so that we all were aware of what ordinance we're supposed to be enforcing. It is 07A, yeah, that attachment. And when I read it, it was kind of surprising to me. I've had my own personal ethical questions about, is it ethical if I vote on this? Is it ethical if I do this related to county government? And when I read it, it said it just applied to employees and that county board supervisors were exempt. So I think what I did is I started Googling other counties around us to see if they had any ethics ordinances. And their ethics ordinances were much different than ours. They were more like, they gave you the reason why you do ethics. Ours has no reason why you do ethics. Just as one example, it's like to gain the public trust and to be transparent and to not use your public positions for personal financial gain and other issues. So I think that's kind of the reason, is just to make sure that we all believe in our ethics ordinance, or, that most of us agree and we think it's good and we're educating ourselves and we can feel comfortable in meetings making the right ethical decisions, I guess.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
You said that it doesn't cover us, but I think you talked at the last meeting that obviously we're still subject to the statute. We went over. the statute. So in those other counties, when I was looking at their ethics codes, did you feel like they added much to what they contained in the statute?
I did, yeah. I felt like they added quite a bit.
Like, I
They
guess-
did a good job of incorporating both.
Mhm.
You know, I have to read, yesterday I was really focused on those other county ordinances. I'd have to read back through the state statutes, but one of the statutes says a local agency may implement their own ethics ordinance, and that's what everyone has done, obviously. And so you are allowed by the state to lay out a lot of ethical standards. You do have to follow a bare minimum. It's like the base level state standards, but then you can add other ethical standards yourself, and you can create an ethics board or committee to administer it, and that's what we've done. So if we didn't have the ordinance, we would not have the ability to hear all those complaints as an ethics board. I don't think. Maybe we would. I'm not sure. Yeah, yeah, go. You were going to say Mr. Frank. Yeah.
I'm going to refer to Clint. Looked like you had something to say earlier as we were deciding purpose of this.
I think you arrived there. There was questions that have been brought up in the past in regards to appropriateness on privileges, and are we, what does that look like? Is it defined? Personal interests, like we talked about, where is that defined? And we know where the lines are, as well as like code of conduct types of behaviors, and then the question too on who it should apply to.
So are we back to Chair Brewer's comment? Where are we going with this? Is this a time we're rehashing it? Do we need to do because of the change in the organization? Do we need to change some language? What's our end goal?
I think that, like the recommended motion I laid out here today, from my view, it's to recommend drafting a new ethics ordinance with certain components. And it's up to this committee to decide what components we want and don't want in there. I laid it out. I would view it as a menu.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I've been on the board now going in my 9th year, and I can't remember of a situation where current rules did not handle the situation, but perhaps you have some other examples where we were inadequate.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The example I used at the last meeting was the Airbnb issue that came up at the last county board meeting. There's a section in here. I can't remember where it is in the chart because the chart's so long. Sorry. But it lays out clearly when a county board member has a conflict of interest, the process they should go through. We don't have that process laid out. So I didn't really know what to do. I just kind of made it up. But after reading that other county's ordinance, thought that would have been a good way to do it.
Just trying to, wrap my head around the situation and see. I mean, they cover this extensively at the counties association. They talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. And so we have a pretty good idea after we leave that meeting, but we don't specifically have a rule about that or situation. I always go, if you think it's wrong, don't do it. I mean.
Well, and I mean this in the most helpful way, but I would just ask you, have you ever run into ethical conflicts personally as a member of the county board?
No, I turned down the Badger football ticket, so I didn't.
Well, I'm not as, okay. I'm throwing myself out there because I have had ethical quandaries, and maybe I overthink things,
I can kind of, in my experiences where it kind of gets called to questions to say, yes, you're off to a conference. Vendor booths are everywhere. They want to solicit different materials and such. What can you accept? Can you accept a can cozy? But, Badger tickets. Where is that line defined as an example? Say that perhaps Bob is at the county fair and he gets in a tussle with somebody in his family, embarrassingly enough, is it just hypothetical? You know, right, but
Cheers, just saying.
just, yeah.
I've
just
heard
saying.
this about Bob,
Yeah.
yeah. Just
So-
kidding.
Is hypothetical, so then it would be called a question on, is that a code of conduct that we would want to have for an elected official and representing the county and different things of that to consider, as well on voting with, there's personal interests on family having businesses, and when is the appropriate time to refrain from voting, which can or may come up on occasion, is hypothetical types of situations that I don't think that, as Chair Murphy Lopez is kind of pointing out through there, we don't have that clarified. The state statutes isn't really going to touch on those things, and without having that solidified in an ordinance, we're not going to know what right is and what wrong is.
Yeah, we've had a couple of county board supervisors that have been in this group before my time on this group, and they had been accused of breaking a law. But our ordinance does not cover that.
And been
Okay,
arrested.
I was gonna say, now that you say it, since I've been on the board there, I know of one particular person that was arrested for a few things, but I don't really know, like when you're in your personal family and doing something that would not be respectful to, what's the repercussions of that? I don't know, is that, I read it in here, but I don't really see that. I mean,
Actually, I really loved what one county did
uh-huh.
on this, and I did pull the language out because I just thought
Where are you, what page?
on page 7, under enforcement, both Crawford and Sauk County say if the Ethics Inquiry Board finds that clear, satisfactory, and convincing evidence exists for believing the allegations of the complaint, the Ethics Inquiry Board shall refer its findings and recommendation to the county board, or in the case of an employee, to the Personnel Committee. The board may make the following recommendations. Recommend that the county board order the officer or employee to conform his or her conduct to the ethics code, or recommend the official or employee be censured, suspended, removed from office, be issued a private reprimand, public reprimand, and in the case of an employee may also recommend denial of merit increase, suspension without pay, discharge, or other appropriate disciplinary action. And then the Ethics Inquiry Board may also refer the matter to the district attorney to commence enforcement pursuant to the procedures and remedies of 19.59 in Wisconsin statutes, which is about removal from office. Ours right now says, yeah, it can go to the DA, but the penalty shall be a minimum of $100 and a maximum of $1,000. Whereas those other counties, they give you more options. And that's what I like about it. It's like,
So it's open-ended, but it's options.
but it lays it out more. It's not just money,
Yeah.
a money punishment.
I like that very much. I think it's much more relevant to that may come up.
I agree. I think it's a time to review it, and just in the time of how things have changed between social media, and I think it's a good idea to review it. My question is, where do we put that in the priority list of everything that's going on, busy-wise, and the budget and everything? Is this something that we set a date to review first part of next year, once we've gotten through the budget? But yeah, I agree. It needs to be reviewed and looked at completely.
Well, the nice thing about these other counties, they've already done it. So to me, it kind of feels like we can pick and choose what language we want. If we have the time in this committee, and most of what's on our agenda today, if you look at 8, 9, and 10, those are pretty short items today. So this is our 5th meeting talking about it, and I don't want to drag it out too long either. I just kind of, and some of it's a little selfish. I guess I just wish I had something to refer to myself. And I'm just assuming other people are in the same boat sometimes, that they feel like in our culture of this county government, we're not always sure how to deal with ethical questions,
Can I ask a question?
but maybe I'm on my own.
No, I
Supervisor
think,
Gentis.
I mean, I know I may not always be perfect, but I think for me, the social media is a huge question for myself. Even when at first I thought, oh, it doesn't matter. I don't post on Facebook. I don't do Instagram. But then if I get an email, I don't usually forward any county business email, but all those things are questionable to me right now. I mean, I know we're not supposed to be contacting each other, but how does that, I don't know how that is, what's ethical or what isn't.
Mhm. And I didn't put that in the chart. That has to do with the open meetings law.
Yeah.
But I think I'd have to look back at those 3 ordinances. I thought some of those had open meetings. They address that in their ethics ordinance. And yeah, people do trip up on that a lot. I mean, personal email, I mean, that gets in the national news too, when you use personal email when you're a government official for a government business, so.
Well, I do use personal email some because I can't type a document on the iPad. I type it on my computer and usually send it to here. But, I mean, it'd be very hard for me to type a long letter on the iPad, I think. So I don't know if that's unethical or not.
Yeah, I've run into that. My keypad isn't actually working right now on my new iPad, so I've had to, but there. Here you go.
If I could, so I think this should be broken into pieces. Whether we take take 2 of the or 3 of the policies that are out there and make sure we go through definitions, make sure we go through purpose. Just trying to flip through some of them and break those down and just take it in groups. I mean, it's going to take a few meetings, but at least we're making progress and we can see that we're taking the first third of the documents and coming up with, here's what we have, and then moving on from there. That's my suggestion.
When opposed to that method of doing it? Okay, who wants to, would you all like to skip the first 3, the governing body, the purpose of ethics, and the positions covered, and get into the different policies, or would you rather do the general stuff first? Thinking if we went through the policies, maybe we might change some of our mind. We might change our minds about who the governing body should be. But, yeah, Mr. Lang.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had a question and I know we're not voting here today, just for my own clarification's sake. The options that you had laid out, sir, across the top of option A, B, and C, did those necessarily have to be consistent all the way down to make sure language jives with each other moving through it can be a la carte, each individual item? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And there might be other options. I was just trying to push some of them out so that we weren't starting from thin air. Yeah.
As we go into looking at this. Question, but on so state statute, you had it on 7B 1959, but highlighted. So the 19.59 where it's highlighted, then when you go down and it says G in this paragraph and it's not highlighted, it's saying that a district means a local professional baseball park district. I'm confused by that section. Does that section not apply to county board officials? Why are they randomly about baseball park?
Well, this is it's called a codes of ethics for local government officials, employees, and candidates. So it applies to every local government in the state. Then they define district as a local professional baseball park district or a local professional football stadium district. So those are government entities. And so G just applied to those districts. So I didn't highlight it because I just thought that has nothing to do with us.
Well, that was my question. I just thought it was pretty random that they put those districts in there, and I wasn't sure because some of that language sounds like it would apply to the county board officials, but you're saying that it specifically only applies to those districts.
That's how
That's
it
how you
looks to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just, yeah, I only,
I've
I-
had this problem with the state statutes before. Sometimes I'm like, what are you trying to say there? So I just wanted to clarify.
I'm assuming they had some issue um, that they were trying to deal with, and they're always looking for the appropriate place in the chapters to stick things, you know, and so they just add another letter, and it doesn't read like a story, you know, that's for sure.
You can make a very good outline sometimes.
No. Okay, oh, go ahead.
No, so we're just trying to figure out how to progress it, right?
Yeah, I
Which-
just want to
which
make
part
sure
to
I'm
start.
not stepping on your all's toes by wading into some of this, and I don't want to. Okay, so let's just start, let's skip the first 3 rows then and come back to those. Closed session policy, that'd be the first one that's like a specific subtopic. In Crawford and Iowa counties, their ethics ordinance says, no county official may disclose any information discussed, debated, or acted upon in a closed session of the county board or its standing committees. So do we want that language in our ethics ordinance? I'm not aware of.
Okay, definitely. I just assumed it was already there but maybe
It's
I,
not in our ethics ordinance, I know that,
Okay.
but.
But don't we have that language, like when we have a closed session on
Yeah.
a meeting? I feel like that language is stated somewhere.
Could be in the rules, we could look there. I mean, I've heard that said to me before. Have I ever seen it written anywhere? I'm not sure.
What do the state statutes say about privileged information in a closed session?
Well, and I should say, you know, that brings up an important point. Sometimes the ordinances will reflect some of what statute has. It's almost like putting it all in one spot for folks to remember, because who's going to go reading those state statutes, you know?
I think there's, Mr. Chairman,
No, we do. No, we do. We do read state statutes, and that's good. But I'm just saying, I think we'll get more people to read it if we put it all in one spot. That's my argument, Mr. C. But go ahead.
I think it's reasonable. It's a reasonable expectation and standard, probably, that conversation or disclosure of information in a closed session is generally confidential information that can't be disclosed outside of that closed session. There is an action taken after a closed section that that defines the action that was taken in terms that do not disclose the deliberations of the closed session. But I think the statutes are pretty darn explicit about how information is managed in a closed session.
What do they say?
Well, I don't have the statutes before me, but by tradition, we have established that policy of not discussing or disclosing information in a closed session, out of a closed session. And I think it's probably advice that came from our corporate counsel. And that's,
Go ahead. Ms. Gentis, go ahead.
even if it's written somewhere else, and since we have enforcement down at the bottom, I think we should just leave it in the ethics board and leave that language in there, because then we have, if something, especially it could be very harmful if that is spoken. So I think we should leave this in and make it part of the ethics.
But I think we should reference it though, because if there's another reference and the language is a little different, we've got to know what that language is. And at this point, I'm not finding that. It's got to be somewhere. Just
Well, our county board rules only say closed session one time. They say it under Rule 18, and all of it does not address this topic. It just addresses meeting materials, or should be available on iPads unless they're presented during a closed session. That's all. That's the only way it addresses it. Mr. Langreich, do you know the statute offhand for closed sessions? And I know we put it in all our agendas. I've read it before, but I don't know. Yeah, 19.85, I'm seeing it. It lists all the exemptions by which we may enter a closed session. Yeah, I'm just skimming through. I'm not seeing anything about members may not disclose what's discussed in a closed session in state statutes. So I think the question is, do we want to make that informal custom that we've had? Do we want to make it formal? I think is the question here. Well,
Yeah.
why would, okay. I'd rather take motions because otherwise I'm going to get lost, Yeah, because just as the one who was pulling all this information out and then trying to chair this and what are we going to write down? We just better do motions, and so we'll have disagreements, I'm sure, and that's okay. Okay, so who wants to make a motion about this one?
Bob.
Oh, Cosgrove volunteers Frank. Is that going to be in the minutes?
Perfect.
Okay, is that a motion by Frank and a second by Cosgrove?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to include the closed session language from Crawford and Sauk counties in a,
Crawford in Iowa?
did I get that wrong? I'm sure you're right. Yes, Crawford in Iowa. So it's a motion to include the closed session policy language from Crawford and Iowa counties in a draft ethics ordinance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. C.
I support that motion with the understanding that even information in a closed session can be public record under certain circumstances, generally by to include a court order or litigation. That's advice that I've heard more than once from corporation counsels, that even though information is sealed in a closed session, it can be made public under certain circumstances. And I would support this resolution with that understanding, or this motion with that understanding.
It's a good point. The school district just went through this.
I think we need to itemize it though. That comes about, it is what it is.
Yeah, there's a process by which people can request open records. And I think in the school district case, the person in question had to okay it, but it did end up being public, what was shared in closed session. But did any county official disclose it? I suppose there was an official at the school district who disclosed it after they went through the open records requests. So I wonder if we just need to just include some sort of catch language for unless.
No, to me, I would say no, that's a state statute for open records. Open records law has been very clear. There's a Wisconsin process for open records, a Wisconsin training online that you can do for that. I think that explains the open records piece fine. I think we're starting to muddy what our vision is by trying to explain what to do ifs. Yeah, we'll write nuances forever, and that's not what we're here for, in my opinion. Yep.
I think that's a matter of, I think Mr. Frank is correct in saying we're getting in muddy water here, deep in the woods. But I think that this whole question of closed session and the handling of privileged information, once a policy is written or an ordinance is amended or changed and in place, that from time to time, board education about this whole business of confident privileged information and conflict of interest, etc. It would be helpful to have a board education from time to time, so that our board members fully have a good understanding of it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a vote on this one. So all those in favor of including the closed session language, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So we can move on to contracting policy. So in Crawford and Sauk counties, they have a contracting policy. I do think this does come up sometimes because we do have contractors at times serving on the board, or, someone may have a part-time job that might, they might potentially enter into a contract with a government agency. That government agency could be the county. So in Crawford and Sauk counties, they say an official or employee or a business in which an official or employee holds a 10% or greater interest may not enter into a contract with the county involving a payment or payments of more than $1,000 within a 12-month period, unless the official or employee has made a written disclosure of the nature and extent of such relationship or interest to the county clerk and reported such interest to the county board. Further, pursuant to statute 946.13, an official or employee is prohibited from participating in the formation of a contract or contracts with whatever county involving the receipts or disbursements of more than $15,000 in any year. Then 07C is state statute, chapter 946. There's a section, it's called private interest in public contract prohibited. And it says any public officer or public employee who does any of the following is guilty of a class 1 felony. And then it talks about them negotiating for bids or entering into contracts in which the officer or employee has a private interest, direct or indirect. It goes on. And it does say, so the $15,000 figure, I couldn't remember if that was just in an ordinance or if it was in statute. It does say here, contracts, says it in statute, in which any single public officer or employee is privately interested that do not involve receipts and disbursements by the state or its political subdivision aggregating more than $15,000 in a year. Says subsection 1 does not apply to that. Oh, so it's basically saying you can do this as long as it's less than 15 grand a year. So it's saying it in kind of a backwards negative way, but so that, I think that's why they put it in their ordinance a little bit more clearly, saying you can do it between 1 and 15 grand, or between 0 and 15 grand, as long as you disclose it above 1 grand, but you cannot do it above 15 grand. That's what they're saying. It's okay.
Is there a way we could state that more clearly?
Yeah, I mean, what about the ordinances from Crawford and Sauk counties? Do you think that was stated clearly? I was reading from
Did you just
statute.
read it? What's Crawford Sauk County example? Wasn't that what you just read?
I did read from there and then I shifted to reading from the state statute.
But even what they have there, I don't feel like is very clear. It wasn't until you made that explanation that I was like,
Oh,
I see where the two fit. I mean, you can get that by reading it 3 times,
And
or you're smarter than me.
can I ask a question?
yeah.
And all that depends on the fact of whether you own 10% or less of, and I find that very 10% or more, but it can, to me, that would be like whether you have a multi-million-dollar business, 10% or more, or a small bit, that's, I don't like that. Does that make sense?
You don't like the 10% rule that Crawford
Yeah.
and Sauk counties have?
Yeah.
What, would you just leave that out? Just, an official or an employee just can't enter into a contract with the county involving a payment of more than $1,000. Just leave it simply.
Because obviously, if you own a company worth several million and you own 5%, you can enter into these contracts.
It would give you an out.
Yeah.
Okay. So Supervisor Glassbrenner is saying, let's make it more simple, more clear, and I agree. I think that's a good idea to make the language clear. And Supervisor Dentis is suggesting we take out the 10% rule. What
Mr.
about?
Chairman,
Yep, Mr. C.
or you could say whichever is less.
Whichever of what is less.
The $1,000 or the $1,000 to $15,000 parameter, or the 10% parameter. You could say that whichever is less of the two.
Those are two different things. The 10% figure just has to do with how much interest you have in a business.
Yes.
The $15,000 amount, that's just about the
okay,
amount
I
of the
misunderstood
contract.
that. Sorry, I misunderstood that.
That's okay. I'm not personally sure about the $1,000 amount. Do we need the $1,000 amount in there, or can we just keep it simple just to be the 15 grand amount?
That's the only question with that is then if you're doing something for $100, it's saying you're gonna have to notify the whole county board. I don't know if that matters.
Well, if we took the $1,000 thing out, you would not have to notify the county board.
I thought that was still what it was saying. You can do between 1,000 and 15,000 with the implication that you must report such interest to the county board.
And I'm saying just take that whole section out.
Oh, so you're saying they don't have to even report it unless it's over 15,000?
Well, you just can't do it if it's over 15,000. That would be a little simpler to say, no county official may enter into a contract with the county
Right.
if it amounts to more than $15,000 in a year.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
does that leave open the possibility of one having a contract less than $15,000 more than once a year, say 4 or 5 times?
So the way within a 12-month, Mr. Cosgrove, yeah, so it says, an official or employee is prohibited from participating in the formation of a contract or contracts with blank county involving receipts or disbursements of more than $15,000 in any year. That's a cap. That's a cap on a year.
Okay.
Dollar contracts is so good. Any more than that.
3 $5,000 contracts. Yes, you could do 3 $5,000 contracts. Anyone care to make a motion on this one?
I'm struggling with this because I'm thinking of employees, even part-time employees that may work for somebody the county contracts with. It says employee, that means those companies cannot put in bids, they can't Where does that limitation
That's
go?
what-
if it's an employee?
That's where I think the 10% part was important, maybe. Because then if you're an employee that is working for someone who does contract with the county, if you're just an employee, then it's fine. I think that's where they came up with the 10%.
Might be good to leave the 10% in.
If we leave the 10% in, then I'm fine with taking out all that other language until just the up to $15,000 in a 12-month
12-month
period.
period.
They still can't do over 15,000 even at 10%.
That's right. Okay, so what if the language said something like, an official or employee or a business in which an official employee holds a 10% or greater interest may not enter into a contract with the county or participate in the formation of a contract with the county involving receipts or disbursements of more than $15,000 in any year.
Sounds good to me. I'll make that motion.
Well, I'll try, I'll read it, I'll read it again, and then I think, it's a matter of pulling. I'll tell you the word to start with and end with in 2 sections. If you can look at 07 ethics review, that document. So does anyone want to second that motion first?
I will second that.
Okay, so it's a motion by Glassbrenner, right? And second by Frank. Okay, and so the motion would be to include contracting policy language in the draft ordinance. And that language would include, it would mimic the Crawford-Sauk County example, starting with the first word. So it's an official or employee or a business in which an official or employee holds a 10% or greater interest, may not enter into a contract with the county. And then you're skipping a bunch of language. So where it says involving a payment or payments of more than 1,000, we're just deleting all of that language. And we're skipping all the way down to or the formation of a contract. So we have to insert the word or, and then about 6 lines from the bottom, it says the formation of a contract or contracts with the county involving the receipts or disbursements of more than 15 grand in any year. So we're basically just cutting out the middle of that language.
Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
To make it even slightly simpler, where it says 10% or greater interest may not, and then instead of saying enter or any of that, I know you cut it after the,
Okay.
instead of saying that, just say may not participate in the formation of a contract, or do we need the enter into? Wouldn't it be the same?
Well, you could develop a contract and never enter into it. You couldn't you? Don't.
I don't know. I doubt this would ever come up, but I'm thinking of situations where we've had, say, example, we had Supervisor Manning that helped with the demolition and raising of a property, and technically at the time we still owned it, the city was going to pay for it, but Gary wouldn't have been able to enter into a contract to do work on behalf of the county as a private business. Likewise then too, if he was also then on a committee that was overseeing then the development of that contract, there could be conflicts without having it defined. And it didn't come to fruition in that situation because the city took over the property and then handled the contract with Gary, but that's an example where you'd want it defined if it didn't go that way.
Yeah, so if he's sitting there in that example, helping to form the contract, that would also be inappropriate. It's not just that he's entering into it and signing his name, but if he's helping draft the terms of the contract, but say he never even enters into it, but just the appearance of him helping to form the contract.
But that's what I was saying. If we just said may not participate in the formation of contract or contracts, would that cover also entering into it, or do you need to include the entering? Because that was state statute language there.
Well, you could not be on that committee and the committee forms the contract with staff and then a county board member just swoops in and signs their name on it, yeah, sure, I'll bid on that and take it.
Okay, well then we'll just leave it the way it is. I just wasn't sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Seat?
could we not say that the individual that were, the potential contractor who's a committee member or an employee would be required to recuse himself if he's a committee member or on an oversight committee from any deliberations of the committee. But on the other hand, you can't exclude him from submitting details of a bid to the committee. It's just that he and you can't exclude him from negotiating with the committee, but he cannot vote on the approval of such a contract. But wouldn't he have a right to submit details of his bid for his own interest? So there's a kind of a blurry line there, isn't there?
Yeah, it's not really addressed in the motion that's before us as far as whether they can stay in the room or not.
Yes.
Saying recuse, which kind of, Mr. Langer?
So staying in the room with the closed session one is if we had, where I just saw that one, stand by. But that's essentially, we would have to have board rules that would say you're able to exclude a supervisor, and that would only be from a committee, I think, and not from the actual board. To partake in like a business negotiation or a closed session. Is that where Supervisor Seep is going?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure
So-
how it relates to the closed session.
The individual would not be allowed to participate in the government decision in the process of voting, but his information with regard to the bid and clarification of his bid might have to be discussed by the committee, and they may have to ask him questions about what he means or what the real definition of his bid is. But where the line, I think, would be drawn is that then at a certain point, he would have to recuse himself from any decision making process that the committee would be making. Doesn't that make some sense?
Well, this policy, the motion before us would not address that.
All right.
It would not say that that person could not participate in the vote. It doesn't get into that issue. The motion before us just lays out, you just can't contract with the county if it's more than 15 grand in a year, as long as you own more than 10% interest.
So this issue would have to be covered in another
Correct.
point.
It's not that we couldn't cover it in the ethics ordinance, but it would have to be covered in a different point if we go with this motion. Okay, any more discussion on this one? And Mr. Langrick, you had pulled up, I saw you highlighted the language in the middle that we cut out in the motion.
Yep, let me pull that back up on the screen. This is what we were looking to amend right there. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
That's right. I just inserted the word or, and then I kept the word the before formation. That's the way I read it when you made the motion. So
Is that up on the screen? I don't see it.
it's up on the screen. Yeah, he just pulled it up again, so it might take a little while to get to Casanova.
And I clicked on it. Now it's not highlighted anymore.
Yeah, so right where it says involving, going from involving all the way down to the word in right after participating. So participating in, you keep, oh, there it comes.
Highlight.
It's not working.
Doesn't want to apply.
Ms. Dole, is it clear to you since you're taking minutes? Excellent. Okay, all right, so all those in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. All right, well, we have 2 sections of our ordinance to include, so
So
we can just keep
I don't-
marching away at this at future meetings.
I don't want to break your rhythm right now, Mr. Chair, but I can follow up on the previous motion that we had taken to leave language in there that allowed for action on disclosure of information in closed session. Not an attorney, not authorized to practice law in Wisconsin, but did find association, the law firm that handles for the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. There was a news release that they pushed out in 2018 that says, in there, it says, the intent of legal closed sessions is to keep the information, discussion, and votes made in closed session from public dissemination. Accordingly, those in attendance should keep such information confidential. The WOML, which is Wisconsin Open Meetings Law, however, does not contain any enforcement mechanism to penalize closed session attendees who disseminate closed session information. Intentional disclosure of closed session information may constitute misconduct in office, which is a felony, which would be addressed in Wisconsin State Statute 19.96. Such a breach can also be addressed through board policy and/or sanctions. Additionally, board members risk losing their qualified immunity from legal action, and the disclosure of confidential closed session information results in litigation against the district board or individual members. So it doesn't look like that, other than a felony type of a thing, which then would require the county board to take legal action through a district versus handling it in-house through an ethics board.
Yeah, so it seems to kind of be backing for the motion we took. And then we'll just have to figure out what the consequences will be of all these different things, enforcement. You know, right now it's $100 to $1,000. And if we can do it in other ways, like, yeah, we could personally sit with a person and say, perhaps conform with the ethics policy. Don't ever disclose this again. Or we can censure them publicly, or what, whatever.
Tape across my face.
Yeah, tape across their mouth, or public flogging. We'll figure it out. Okay, well, yeah, thanks for, I guess, entertaining this. I hope, well, if you don't find this valuable, this process, let me know if it gets too in the weeds. Yeah, let's say that, because we don't want to be doing this forever here. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but
No, I think we need to just section by section like this, every meeting, we're gonna plow through and clarify stuff. I think this is good. And it's gonna give me time to look over the changes we have made and just run some ideas. So I think this is a good start.
okay.
On top of the fact,
Mr. Cosgrove, yeah.
of the clarity for those county board members that do have businesses that could do business with the county, but haven't been able to.
Yes, they might have a little more freedom, for example, under this contracting policy to actually enter into contracts as long as they stay below a certain amount. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 8, per diems for county board member attendance at partner committees, conferences, and trainings. Whose idea was this originally? This one wasn't me. Why are we doing this? Was this Chair Brewer?
Probably.
Okay. But I won't make you answer that. Okay, so what last committee, what happened last month at this committee, the committee, I believe, approved developing some language, a proposed set of language, so you all could react to it. I think the concept was agreed upon by the group that yes, there should be more explicit language about per diems for these other committees. I think that's kind of how it started. The committees of the WCA are committees of other groups that county officials are involved in as representatives of the county. I also included trainings, because those come up, and conferences. And conferences, that language is already in our rules. So what I did is I left highlighted in yellow. We had this rule last time in the cover sheet. I had the highlights in yellow. The only thing I changed this time was I tracked changes with underline. And underlined words are also in a maroon color as well. So especially on page 2, you can see the more substantial changes at the end of the paragraph labeled B as in boy. So I added a sentence that says, the county board's committee shall be defined as those listed in the county's committee structure document or those where the county board chair has approved membership. Not sure if that's going to cover them all, but just something to start with here. Because I know with the WCA committees, Chair Brewer approved, Supervisor Frank and myself being at those. And then the other language I added that's the big difference is in that paragraph D as in dog. I added a sentence in there that says, no matter their location, per diem shall be defined as $40 for a half day, and then parentheses, 4 hours or less, and $80 for a full day, more than 4 hours. So I don't know if those are the right dollar amounts, but one of the problems before is we have not defined what a per diem is for a conference or a convention. I added trainings in that paragraph D, and I struck multi-day because sometimes trainings are one day or they're half a day. So love to hear criticisms, reactions. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seep and then Mr. Frank.
Yes, I can recall one example, and that's the training that the WCA puts on for each county board right after a new term starts. And, the session is usually held at the White House or elsewhere. And in the past, that has had a per diem rate of $40 for the attendees. And generally, that's a conference that lasts more than 4 hours. That's the only example that I can think of at a time, but by tradition, we paid a $40 per diem for that. And I think
And
by policy.
Where was that policy? Was it a spoken policy or was it a written policy?
Well, I'm sure that somewhere it must have been a policy or they wouldn't have paid it.
Well, I've never seen it in writing anywhere.
Okay, well.
So I believe it may have been a spoken policy, but never a written policy.
Possibly.
Someone knows something I don't.
Well, we did have a policy of paying county board members $40 for meetings. And I suppose since that had to be posted as a meeting, it probably was covered under that rule.
Can I ask, I never heard of the $40 for meetings. I guess I thought it was $30 for all meetings and except for the county board.
It was $30 for committee meetings and $40 for county board meetings by rule.
Right. Yeah, and that rule is in the cover sheet here. Letter 1, $40 for each day's attendance at a meeting of the county board. Number 2, $30 for attendance at meetings of boards or committees.
So how did you come up with the $40 for a half day instead of 30? I mean, not that I'm trying to be cheap, but we're trying not to spend more.
Well, we get paid $40 right now for a county board meeting. Typically, those last 2 to 2.5 hours. That's just for the meeting. That's not for prep. If people are preparing for the meeting. So if we're in a training for a half a day for 4 hours, I thought, well, that's more time than we spend in a county board meeting. So we could do $40 for a whole day. It just seems like for all the time we spend, it just seems like maybe we should be, I think we should be compensated for that.
It's a sub minimum wage.
Yeah, it's $10 an hour for 4 hours,
I know.
But that's how I came up with it, but it might not be the right thing. I know when I was doing research on other counties with conferences and trainings that the Chair Brewer asked me to look into, Up in Door County, they paid, I can't remember the amount, but they paid a pretty healthy amount per day. It was a lot more than this, you know, for going to conferences. Yeah, right now we just don't have we don't have anything. So if someone wants to make a different suggestion, you know, I'm definitely open to that. It's just something for you to react to. So,
I was just thinking, since we're not raising salaries as much, maybe, but I was on Incluser, it used to be called a different name then. And I was the lowest paid person from all the counties that was in attendance.
So, if I may, under section B, the red underlined, the county boards committees shall be defined as those listed in the county's committee structure document, or those where the county board chair has approved attendance versus membership. I think membership indicates that we are members. There may be some of those meetings where the county isn't a member of, but the county board chair is still recommending attendance at. That would be my suggestion for a change on that. And then the other item for the dollar figure, if someone wants to make a motion to, 30, 60, whatever, like you said, that's what it's here for the discussion for.
sounds like a great idea under paragraph B, has approved attendance. I think that works too. Chair Brewer, did you ever approve Supervisor Luck being on Wisconsin Land and Water?
Wanted to. Yes.
So she asked you. Okay.
Yes, she did. Yeah, sure.
So then that would be you approving. Okay. I wanted to know if that language, or are there any other bodies
Well,
that we
didn't-
serve on that?
Didn't you just approve her to be on something for broadband or some other county thing?
Well, that was
But she might go to attendance for that. That would be,
So that would be an example.
yeah.
Does this definition right now, Mr. Chair, does this cover like an ad hoc committee that wouldn't be in document?
Well, I guess so, because the county board chair approved the membership of the referendum ad hoc committee, right?
I guess that was my question. If we say attendance, that should cover if we form an ad hoc committee.
So, who wants to talk?
Looks like
Uh,
Clint does.
Mr. Chairman,
I just wanted
Oh, several
to
people
kind of
volunteered,
add to the actual, in the budget season on what our actual, like our yearly actuals are. So not many of you folks claim per diems for your meetings that you're attending to. So the financial impacts are kind of, trying to gauge on how much it's going to be is a little hard to gauge, because it requires you folks to submit the vouchers and get paid for it. The other thing then that kind of gets called a question too then is, at some point near or far, do we want to consider going into more of a salary type of a model where board supervisors are perhaps paid on a salary type of a thing? I don't know how, take some thinking on how if we want to extend the same type of privilege and model to those that are citizen members that are joining in and not part of the county board of supervisors, because there's different levels of hours committed, and how many meetings you're going to would be a consideration, but just to kind of put that way to help further muddy the waters. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Seep, go ahead.
2 points here. I think that from my experience in the past, the highway committee, sends people to various meetings, and apparently they have the authority to do that without going to the county board or to the county chair. And also, I know from my service on Health and Human Services that the Director of Human Services would announce that there were various types of meetings or training sessions or conferences that would be beneficial to board members, and would invite or ask members to indicate whether or not they're interested in attending, and some did, and that was done without further permission from any other body or 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 board chair. So I think there are some exceptions here based upon the type of agency that is involved. The other thing that I recall is that if a committee in and of itself, one of the oversight committees, found it prudent to ask a member to attend a meeting either in another county or at another time, that or for the benefit of the committee, that the committee would authorize per diem for that meeting, and of course mileage if they had to go out of town. So those are 3 points that we might want to keep in mind as we put together this policy.
Okay, so we're not, I don't want to say we're putting together a new policy. We're amending an existing board rule, which sets
Yes.
policy.
Okay.
A2 already covers the situation that you're talking about, and there's no proposed change to that. It says a per diem shall be paid to a supervisor to attend a meeting of a board, committee, or commission of which he or she is not a member, only when such attendance has been directed by either the county board chair or by a committee, board, or commission of which the
Oh,
supervisor.
okay. I didn't see that.
So that's already covered. The other issue is kind of budget related. I did attach the budget that the clerk pulled up for us so we could see where we were as of the end of June. I kind of like having the county board chair approving membership. I'm okay with the membership or attendance language, just throw them both in there. But I kind of like that because then the county board chair could say, well, I checked the budget. No, I'm not going to approve that one because, we're about to run over budget, So at least it gives someone some authority to kind of be the financial check on the 21 of us. So
Mr. Chair, this is Derek. May I say
Yes.
something?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I just want to echo what Clint said regarding per diems paid on a salary basis. I think as we look at, we're talking about different meetings and what qualifies as a per diem, what doesn't, how does that qualify, who's approving this. I think from a budgetary standpoint, you just pulled up this expenditure guideline. I think having salaries and predetermined meetings would make the most efficient use of our time and the way we're trying to budget and account for these things. I also think it would kind of fall in line with the idea that we just reorganized all these committees and everyone was, placed on a certain number of committees, or we really tried to align that so everyone had equal participation in committees. I think it does create some efficiencies and it really does help us project budget numbers better. Is this report then is great and it gives us what we need, but I just think there's lots of efficiencies in having a straight salary for people across the board. We can define, how many meetings that's composed of or things like that. But I know other municipalities do this, and I just think it's something we should consider. I know we're not talking about that today, but as we look at budgeting and how to get a really good handle on this, we could make different for like citizen members, they could still do a regular per diem process. We already kind of have these things in place, but I really like the idea of salaries because I do think it's very efficient. I know it's not what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Well, and we could, if we decide that we want to go down the salary route for county board members, we could postpone action on this item, you know, in favor of developing something like that. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but yeah, at our last committee meeting, we decided to have proposed language to address this particular issue. So
So,
kind of up to the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr.
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 Chairman, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
if we took any action regarding amounts, it wouldn't apply until 2024
Right,
anyway,
that's what I
because we can't vote during, we can't increase our salaries or per diems during our tenure on the board.
That's correct.
right.
And what's the what's the state statute for that? I don't know that there is one, so before we go down that path, I want to make sure that someone's located the state statute that says we can't do that.
Well, I know there is a state statute. I don't know which one it is, but I know that there is.
I know that we set salaries for like our elected officials with our coroner and sheriff and clerk of circuit court, but I guess I'm unaware of one that's establishment for per diems and mileage and such for board members. I would have to investigate.
Yeah, these aren't salaries we're talking about. These are per diems. We're not proposing to change your salary.
Well, we don't know.
Oh, but I see what you're saying. If we postpone this in favor of doing salaries, you're saying we couldn't do that till 2024. But I still think though,
Change it, it just wouldn't apply until 2024.
We can do both. We can do this and then have one for 2024 that switches to salaries.
if the state statute says that we can't. Yeah,
I'll look that up.
we still need to see that state statute because I think that applies to the sheriff, the clerk of court, those constitutional officers. I'm not sure it applies to county board members, but we have to look.
Why is
It's a
it-
good
Well,
idea.
all I know is that we
Why is
always
the state
followed that
legislators-
policy in the past.
Always followed that.
Okay,
so I guess at this point, I would make a motion to postpone this under two topics. One is looking at the salary topic, see what that looks like, because I don't think we have enough information on that. And then two, we can then decide what the draft is, which I like, but I have some suggested changes. So my motion is to postpone this at this point, waiting, pending some further information on salaries and what that might mean.
okay, so motion to postpone pending or until a salary proposal has been drafted?
Yes.
And it contingent on anything else besides that? Okay, so motion to postpone by Frank. Second by Cosgrove.
I just.
Go
can
ahead,
we
Ms.
just go-
Yeah.
Okay, I think in the ethics thing we're talking about, I think we should write in that I don't think that people should increase their salaries during their term of office. I mean, that would be something to consider during the ethics.
I would agree with that. I think it logically makes sense.
Okay, so we'll look into that statutes. Sure. Any other discussion on the motion to postpone?
I mean, I'm sure you're already considering this, Mr. Chair, but I think with the salary, I would want to know some information on, obviously what is a typical salary, you know, and how many meetings does that include? What happens if a supervisor tends to miss a lot of meetings? You know, does that affect salary? Do you then have a per diem beyond that for any special meetings that you're attending or conferences? You know, those kinds of questions.
Mr. Chairman, is discussion allowed on a motion to postpone?
Absolutely. It sure is. It's in our board rules. I am definitely not thinking about all of that stuff, Supervisor Glassbrenner. I think we'd probably be, and I know the clerk's on here, so we'll see if he objects to this, but I think we're probably relying on the clerk. Since he's the one who we submit our per diem forms to come up with a proposal for us.
Or recommendations from other counties or how other counties do it. Let's get a picture of what this looks like.
Yeah.
So we can make a decision. It may be $50 a year salary. We don't know. We just don't have enough information to decide anything. So I think we need to
Yeah, the clerk's got the budget and he can see, he's got access to all the financial data that shows the per diems that we do actually charge. So we'd have to have some sort of a proposal come up. Are you comfortable doing that, Mr. Kalish?
Yes, that's fine. I will reach out to the counties that are like a plus or 2,000 population difference in ours, like I did for Westvote service fees, and see, how they handle meetings, if they do per diems or what they do for salaries, and I will have something ready. Bear in mind, there's an election coming up in November and budget in October. So, did you have a time frame in which you would like this information?
No, it's just, the motion to postpone is until the information can be generated. There's no
Okay.
say in the motion.
Great. Well, then I will begin work on that.
Bob stated that very friendly to your needs.
Perfect. I will work on it. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Thanks for the discussion on that. Okay, agenda item number 9, comprehensive plan review. To keep this one going, I think our role is to come up with a scope and a budget. I thought that was written down somewhere, or maybe I just thought it. I'm not sure. And I thought in order to get, how do we take Supervisor Glassburner's presentation from the last meeting and take it to the next step? I thought we could potentially give ourselves a little homework before the next meeting to review the comp plan and I would use her presentation really, but probably flip through the comp plan too. I don't know that anyone can really read all 300 pages. Like,
If anybody wants to see a physical copy, because I know for me, that's just easier sometimes. I do have one. It was loaned to me though, with strict instructions to be careful with it. So I'm happy to allow you guys to look at that too.
don't give it to anyone you don't trust. Okay, so what get to the cover sheet here. What I was proposing here is at our next meeting, we do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis of our current comp plan. So I can take us through an exercise like that. Do it for my job pretty regularly with members of the public. If you all are amenable to that, we don't have to do. Not today, no. I'm just saying you have to read the plan or become more familiar to do that. You can't say what are the weaknesses of our comprehensive planning in Richland County if you've never looked at the plan.
The comprehensive plan, is that online?
It is. The link is included in the cover sheet.
You?
Mr. Seif, we assumed you'd read it and we're ready today to talk about it, so.
Well, I did serve on the comprehensive planning committee, but I've talked enough.
It's long, it's very long.
So that's the only preparation you need to do. You don't have to think about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats ahead of time. Just get more familiar with the comprehensive plan. That's all you need to do. It'll all be interactive and there's no other homework other than that, as long as no one objects to it. How about I'll put it that way?
The link I tried does not connect.
Okay, how about
Can go back to last.
thanks for catching that.
So under the notes,
I think it will pull up. Yeah, there we go. If you click on the link that's in the first or second slide of my presentation, it'll take you to the list of comprehensive plans, and then you'll just scroll down and find Richland. Yeah.
So we go to last month.
No, it's in our folder this month.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, I put it in there again. So it's
there it is.
it's on the first slide. It's the link at the bottom of the first slide. Yeah, that's the correct link.
There's some other hyperlinks in there as well. On the second slide, it takes you to the statute.
I'm on the first slide. Oh, Richland County Comprehensive Plan, right? So where do I click? Right there? Okay.
Yeah, right under where it says link to digital copy of plan.
Okay, it didn't say Richland County, that's why.
And then you got to scroll down to Richland
Richland
counties.
Got it.
I think because of the link, I tried to copy the actual PDF link and I don't think that worked. If anyone has any trouble finding it, let us know, but make sure to do that, and I'll let Supervisors Fleming and Glassbrenner know.
Yeah.
Not Glassbrenner, Rudershore. She's probably the only one who doesn't have to do the homework. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's move on to agenda item number 10, which is county board meeting date change. So we've got a survey sent out. The results are in the cover sheet.
Can I make a confession?
You didn't take the survey?
So I saw that email come through when I was like doing something else and then completely forgot. So if I had answered, and I apologize,
It's okay. You'll be our 18th.
yeah, I would have had, so obviously the time that already works, I would be there. But then well, honestly, pretty much any of those other times would have worked for me. So it would be an extra number on all of those.
Okay.
I hear confessions, but granting absolution requires a severe penance.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it.
Did anyone else here not fill it out that wants to verbally do it right now? You'll be given forgiveness. Okay, yeah, so you can see on here that the, after the current date, so the way the survey was, if anyone needs a reminder, is that you could click on all of the options that work for you. And so 17 people answered it and 13 people said that the current date works for them. And then 10 people said that the fourth Mondays and the fourth Tuesdays at 7 p.m. work for them. And then 6 p.m. worked for fewer people. And then there were 2 other responses. And then on the survey, you might remember if you took it, you might remember that you could also enter, what did I say, thoughts or questions about it. So it's possible also, if you would like me to read some of the responses, I can also do that, but
We don't have that on here.
no, I didn't include it in
Did you
here,
have-
but I got it on my, I just got a free
important?
login to SurveyMonkey. I would not say that this had like, to me, it seemed like there were about half and half, like some people were like, sounds like a good idea to me, or there was 1 or 2 that said I'm indifferent. There were some others who were like, no, don't do this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
May I remind the committee why we're doing this? Not just on a whim, but an entreaty has been received from the mayor and the city council because they feel that the same business or the same people need to be at each meeting and they can't do it on the nights that, okay, they conflict.
Can I say something?
Sure.
It conflicts one time because there's 2 meetings that they have. And for me personally, I cannot really attend the 4th Tuesday.
And we did in the survey said the reason why we're looking into it. It said, we're looking into the possibility of recommending a change to the regularly scheduled county board meeting to avoid a current conflict with the city council. So everyone was aware of the reason when they answered the question.
So
yeah.
my comment, Mr. Chair, would be like, if you included my numbers as well, that'd be, for example, if we're looking at the 4th Monday at 7, that'd be 11 out of 18, which is well over half. I mean, it's not a bad shot at a proposal, I guess.
Yeah. Do you want to make a motion? I did not write a motion on this because I did not know what.
Can I just,
Yeah.
It is for 10 months out of the year because in December we meet at a different time and November we don't meet, correct?
I think we did meet in November. Yep. But right now our rules would state that the other thing would be if we did switch to a different one, we'd still have obligations in April to meet on the second Tuesday by statute for organization.
Third.
Right, so it's,
Sorry, third Tuesday,
yeah, but that's just that, what, every 2 years, or is it every year?
every 2 years.
2.5 months out of the year. Use the average over 2 years. Fourth Monday or fourth Tuesday.
We could at least bring it forward.
Did anyone say they couldn't do it on that Monday in the comments?
I'm just gonna read through the comments because I don't feel good to try to summarize without. So, and people put their names with this.
Yeah.
And I asked people to put them. So Julie Fleming said, I'm in favor of switching the meeting days to allow citizens to attend both meetings if they wish. Gary Manning did not have any comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Survey. Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, why don't you hold on while I read these? Unless you object to me reading them.
No objection.
Okay, so Ken Renish didn't have any comments. Steve Williamson didn't have any comments. Carrie Severson had quite a few comments. Why is this an issue? We organized back for the current term back in April of 2022. It should have been taken into consideration at that time. Some supervisors work and some are retired. Papers need to be turned in or being on the April 24 ballot during the first week of January. Discussion should be at the October 2023 meeting of the county board. So future candidates of the 24-25 county board of supervisors would have the ability to turn in papers by the first week of January 24, thus making sure new candidates know when county board is held and arrangements can be made to attend. Goes on from there, but that I think gets to the one of the main concerns that Mr. Severson had. Mr. Frank, you had a comment of how will changing the county board times improve city-county communications? I did not have any additional comments. Supervisor Luck did not. Supervisor Seep said you said, Mr. Seep, I prefer no change. Supervisor Caro did not have any additional comments. Supervisor Turk said, I believe it would be a good idea. Supervisor Gottschall said he was indifferent. Supervisor Gentis said, you said, I would like the meeting to stay the same as it is or move to 6 p.m. I cannot attend the fourth Tuesday of the month. Supervisor Voice said, I'm open to any. Supervisor Rudersdorf said, as long as it doesn't interfere with other committee meetings. Chair Brewer, you said I suggested it. And that was it. As far as other comments came in.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Seep.
Does not the changing the meeting date for the term require a 3/4 vote by the body?
I don't think so. I mean, board rule change requires a majority vote. I've never heard that board rule changes require more than that. Unless you have some documentation of that.
Just memory.
Sometimes that's good as long as we can find the writing somewhere.
You know, the question came up just now. I didn't have the documentation. Your expectations of me are a little
Are they too
stringent.
high? I'm sorry. Maybe they are. Might be true.
I probably will vote either way to change, but not the fourth Tuesday. I understand the sentiments and wanting to work well with the city. I do sort of agree with Carrie Severson's point, and that whether we could vote now, to be changing it for now for 2024. I don't know. It does seem a little strange to change it in the middle of someone's term.
Well, we did the reorg right in the middle of everything too, as we were coming into some of the changes. I mean, so we knew the reorg was coming. We had the November discussion about it, and then we voted on it in December, so.
No,
wasn't that it?
We voted on, we did the reorg right before the new term started.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We started discussions back
We-
in,
Right.
Right.
before
We
that.
made sure
I thought it was
for
just
the new
okay.
term.
let's see. Yeah, I've actually been in favor of making a change, but I actually am really glad we did the survey because I personally think that our first priority has to be to our membership. And while I would not mind changing the date because any of the dates work for me, I have a hard time changing the meeting for another body if the current members can't, if some of them, it was kind of hard to tell from their comments, could they not make it or did they not want to change? I couldn't quite tell, but I think doing it for the next term, I think bringing this forward to the county board would be kind of divisive. I think it's gonna, some people are just gonna rub some people the wrong way, and so I want to make the change. I just don't know if this is the right time, I think.
Did it state in the survey, a time frame? Like, did it say whether it would apply to this term or next term? Well, I'm wondering, yeah, if we brought it forward and it was stated that this would be for the next term, perhaps it would be less, like you're saying, divisive. And I don't know if that would satisfy the reason why you brought it forward. I mean, it would put it off a little bit, but it would still set that process in motion. I thought of that too. Only it's during the city council time.
Well, they has.
Oh,
They have 2 meetings.
right. But you're saying he would come to our meeting when we discuss this, but isn't that still during?
That was fun. But,
Oh.
but I remember the last.
Yeah, I would support this moving forward if it was effective for the 24-25 term.
7.
I'm open to that.
Is that your motion?
I'll make a motion that we move this forward, but we got to pick a date, so I need some help. What should I throw in there? 4th Mondays or 4th Tuesdays at 7 p.m.? 4th Mondays?
Talking about, what did you say? I missed it.
So I think yeah. For the next term. So what if you said you can't do 4th Tuesdays, right? Supervisor Gentis? Okay, so I'll make a motion to forward a board rule change so that the county board would regularly meet on the 4th Mondays at 7 p.m. With the exceptions that are already in county board rules staying in place. As long as it's effective for the 24-25 term.
I would second that.
Okay, so motion by myself, second by Glassbrenner. Further discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
I would like to ask Mr. Brewer for his comment with regard to this motion.
I'll vote against it because I want to consider it right now. To be effective now instead of waiting.
okay.
Does this then go where to, are we, it's gonna sit still until,
Would go to county board, but the rule would be written so that would be effective,
Okay.
24-25. So it would go into our board rules, but or it could, I guess, or we could just postpone this totally and handle it later.
so you should go to the board?
I was actually trying to help Chair Brewer here because but
I think it's good because I think people are already thinking, will be thinking in January about whether they want to run for county board the next, I mean, people think ahead.
I think it should go to the county board. If we make this recommendation, they can change the recommendation. At least at that point, we have everybody in the room that can have that conversation. And at that point, we can make the amendment to
Right.
do it sooner. But let's get everybody together in the same room and have that conversation.
And I think if you think that the mayor would want to come and speak, that would be, might help the discussion.
Can I just read the exceptions that are in the board rule right now, just so we're clear on those? Because I think we might need one more exception listed. So the exceptions are the annual meeting shall be held the last Tuesday of October. So if we go with the fourth Monday, that exception would be listed. And then the December meeting shall be held on the second Tuesday of the month.
So why can't it be the last, in 2024, be the last Monday? Because it is the fourth Monday. Why one more day later?
So would you like to make an amendment to my motion?
Yes,
So you would like to amend
for 2024.
a motion to amend saying that the annual meeting shall be held on the last Monday of October? Okay. Is there a second for that?
Second that.
Okay, second by Glassbrenner. Any discussion on that motion to amend? Would you like to take a roll call on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Okay, that motion to amend passes. And then it says the December meeting shall be held on the second Tuesday of the month. No, it doesn't say the time.
Oh,
Do you want,
it's 7 p.m. now. I
you want that to change? Do you want that to change? So we'd have the last Monday of October.
The second Monday.
Do you want the second Monday of December?
Well, I don't know what the current committee meetings, I guess none of them are at 7 p.m. anyway.
Just open in December, isn't it? Have it. At a luncheon over at the campus. Why can't it? Whatever date we choose. It doesn't.
Well, the rule says, Chair Brewer, the rule says the hour of the meeting of the board shall be 7 p.m. It does. That's what rule number 1 says. It says any regularly scheduled meeting of the board and any special meeting that may be called may be adjourned to a specific date and time other than the date and time for the next regularly scheduled meeting. Okay, so do we want to change that to the second Monday, or you want to leave that alone?
Simon's at 7 on the second Monday.
Can't we just change them all to the fourth Monday now? Isn't that easier?
But the fourth Monday would be in the week after Christmas.
Oh, I mean, oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, forget I said anything. It's my birthday.
Okay.
Don't be the Grinch.
The other change I would make would be, so I'll make a motion to amend to include language that says, except for the organizational meeting, which shall be held the third Tuesday in April in even numbered years. Does anyone want to second that?
Second that motion.
We got a second by Cosgrove. Any discussion on that amendment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Okay, that motion to amend passes. So we have now before us a motion that's been twice amended. The motion is to change the county board meeting date to the fourth Monday of each month, effective for the 24-25 term. And then it was amended twice. So we have that the October meeting, instead of it being held the last Tuesday of October, would be the last Monday of October. And we also have the exception for the organizational meeting in April
We
included
don't
in the
know about
motion.
December, right?
We didn't take any action on December. So that is still at the second Tuesday in December.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Clint, we have to have a formal, public hearing on the budget, for instance? Don't we? Some of these meetings, dates correspond with having the public hearing.
The,
Are we messing that up?
well, the reason I think we have the October one has been later is because we don't have a November one to kind of close that gap. And then we have our obligation to get our tax levy set so that we know how to push it out to school districts and to the municipalities to come through. So the real thing to that is to have a budget in 3 weeks for the public posting. So we've done our hearing and budget approval historically in the same evening, which has always been the last Tuesday in October. Does that answer your question? No, it'd only be 1 day prior, so it would. Okay, we just have to make sure that we are, of course,
And
the publication aspect of it.
Okay, well, let's just do a roll call still so the clerk knows how to, or whoever prepares the resolution knows how to mark our votes. Okay, so Ms. Dahl, can you do a roll call on the amended motion, please?
Beep,
Aye.
Glassbrenner,
Aye.
Gentis. Aye. Cosgrove. Frank,
Aye.
Murphy Lopez,
Aye.
Brewer,
Aye.
all voting aye, motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dole. Okay, so we'll move that along to the county board. Agenda item number 11, future agenda items. Chair Brewer, do you have any?
No.
Supervisor Glassbrenner? Supervisor Gentis? It's the item on process for appointment of members of committees by the county board chair. Yeah, that'll come back. Yes, it was not on the agenda because you told me not to put it there. Yeah. Supervisor Cosgrove. Supervisor Frank. Supervisor Seat.
No.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to, what's the date? Okay, so looking for a motion to adjourn to
Frank
Thursday,
moves.
October 6th
October 6th.
at 10 a.m. Motion by Frank, second by Glassbrenner. All those in favor, please say aye. Okay, thanks, everyone.